let's move on to our last presentation before our small break. This presentation will be held it's pre-recorded, and it will be presented by speakers from Armenia, Gayane Eliazyan and Taguhi Tshenteretshyan. And then their presentation explores the restoration examples of Armenian Manuscript Pastedowns and preservation of rare manuscripts heritage.
Hello, dear colleagues. I'm Gayane Eliazyan, Head of Restoration Department of Matenadaran, Institute of Ancient Manuscripts, Yerevan, Armenia.
Hello, dear colleagues. I am Taguhi Tshenteretshyan, Senior Restorer. We are happy to participate in your conference, and here is our report. All the richness of Armenian culture would not be complete without its invaluable manuscript heritage and its integral part, fabric doubler of the binding, which are often decorated with artistic embossings. According to the research of L.A. Durnova, the earliest doubler is dated to 14th century. The early examples of these textiles are mostly in red color and have geometric elements. The techniques for applying patterns to fabric have improved significantly over time, and the geometric symbols were enriched with Christian and vegetal motifs. Hand embossing or printing from carved blocks was carried out on different kinds of fabrics, such as linen, cotton, and silk. Among the more than 20,000 manuscripts preserved at the Mashtots Institute of Ancient Manuscripts, there are some that stand out for their exceptional features and thus become subjects of study for conservators, since certain of the earliest examples make it possible to determine dating and origins of the manuscripts themselves. The physical condition of Armenian manuscripts is the most accurate reflection of all the hardships endured by the Armenian people, since the manuscripts were exposed to fire and water, stored in unfavorable conditions, and often reached conservators with numerous issues affecting the preservation of their historical appearance. In the Conservation Department of the Matenadaran, established more than 60 years ago, many invaluable medieval manuscripts are restored. One of the final stages in process of restoring the medieval manuscripts is the restoration of the binding, which also includes work with damaged fabric doublers. The conservation of damaged fabric doublers are retaining their historical look is always a serious challenge. Solving such a task requires specialized knowledge in the textile production technologies, as well as the development of conservation methods and techniques. The purpose of microanalytical investigation is to make strong identification of materials and understanding them better to preserve the object to the great extent. Technical study was being conducted by non-invasive optical methods, followed by non-destructive examinations of microsamples to determine the condition of paper, parchment, textiles, and other materials. The predominant colors of Armenian fabric doublers were red, blue, and white, although the palette was not limited to these colors. Fabric doublers were adhered to the inner side of wooden boards in historical bookbinding structures, served both functional and decorative purposes. The medieval fabric doublers that have survived to this day are extremely worn, and the work of restoration them, just like the entire restoration of a manuscript, passes through specific stages. The diversity of passed down in medieval manuscripts is further illustrated by the work on the parchment synaxarion, consisting of 592 leaves, 27 of which are paper. The manuscript was written in Constantinople at different times. The first part was produced in 1671 by the two scribes, Philippos and Yeria, while the second part was written in the 18th century by an unknown scribe. The manuscript is decorated with a table of concordance, laws, and numerous marginalia. Unfortunately, the miniaturist is unknown. In this manuscript, a particularly interesting element is the pass down, which differs radically from the traditional Armenian Pastedowns. It consists of fragments of a solid canvas painting, most likely of European origin, painted in oil. The painted Pastedowns was in a deplorable condition due to extreme degradation. The faces and other attributes of the painting were erased. However, judging by the color of the figure's garment, it can be assumed that the canvas depicted the Virgin Mary, since her attire corresponds to the generally accepted norms for her representation. The purple robe with the blue mantle symbolizes the earthly and the heavenly realms. A microbiological study was conducted to the fungi and bacteria. Active fungus Alternaria was found, and after which disinfection was carried out using acetone vapors for 5 hours. The pigment composition of the paint layers on parchment, paper leaves, and Pastedowns canvas was analyzed using a Bruker FTIR spectrometer, Hitachi XRF analyzer, and Dinolite AD digital microscope. On the Pastedowns canvas, red Armenian cochineal, green verdigris, and blue ultramarine pigments were identified. X-ray analysis of the yellow paint on fabric doublers showed a relatively low gold content, 6.5%, while the white pigment, lead white, contains 66.8% lead. On the parchment, the following pigments were identified: blue ultramarine, red Armenian cochineal, and ink, a mixture of green nutgalls and carbon black. The parchment pages were largely deformed and partially detached from the sewing structure. During the restoration, the manuscript was mechanically disbound and dry cleaned. The leaves were humidified, flattened between felts, and mended with toned Japanese paper. The text block was sewn with double cord supported loop stitch and herringbone sewing style using the original sewing stations. A new traditional endband was made using 5 needles and 3-color silk threads and worked over 3 cords to create a chevron design. The traditional Armenian endband style most often includes red, white, and black colored threads. Armenian endbands were not only decorative but played a major structural role. The wooden boards of the original binding had cracks and numerous signs of insect damage, many round holes from which wood dust fell. No insects were found, so the disinfection treatment was limited to injection 96% ethanol into the holes and mechanically remove the wood dust. The holes and cracks were then filled with shredded wood pulp. After that, the whole surface of the boards was sanded. After cleaning and removal of residual glue, textiles and surface dirt, the leather covering was remounted onto the binding board with losses supplemented using new leather. Wooden pegs and leather straps were also restored. The Pastedowns had severe damage in the form of numerous losses and craquelure due to the absence of a ground layer across the entire surface. The paint layer was consolidated using 6% Sargent glue, which was applied with a soft brush in an upward direction. To prevent deformation during consolidation, the canvas was secured on a flat surface and the edges were lined with medium-thickness Japanese paper. The Japanese paper was then adhered to the working surface with the back of the canvas protecting by Holitex paper to prevent sticking. The canvas was sprayed with glue, covered with Holitex and filter paper, and dried under weight. The next day, a second consolidation was carried out using fish glue, to which honey was added as a plasticizer in 1:1 ratio to the dry weight of the glue. The canvas was lightly ironed with a low-heated iron up to 60 degrees. Then the object was left to dry and flatten for another 24 hours. The entire process was repeated twice. The condition of the paint layer was monitored throughout the entire process under the microscope. In summary, the paint layer was successfully consolidated and further flaking of the paint was halted. The canvas was restored using toned Japanese paper of appropriate thickness and mounted onto the binding cords. Thus, conservation efforts of 17th century manuscript with this unique fabric doubler has been returned to an original historical and aesthetic look. The authors expressed their gratitude to the scientific staff of the Matenadaran's biochemical group, chemist researcher Armenian Eliazyan and biologist Lucine Markarian for the pre-restoration studies, as well as to the artist restorer from the National Gallery of Armenia, Artashes Abrahamian, for professional consultation on the restoration of the painted canvas. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you, Gayane Eliazyan, for their presentation. If you have any questions, write them an email, and thank them for the presentation also. They probably like that. And now it's time for a coffee break. Thank you.